Ladies and gentlemen, my name is jamespfp. This is the Banjocast. Well, what passes for one? Not a lot of banjo tonight. I'm here getting ready to resume labor in Blender. But before I do, I'm going to watch the rest of this video, which I just started watching as I was eating and didn't quite finish. So I figure, hey, what the heck? I'll post a link before we start in the information for this video, in the settings, like how to put this in the description of this video. There's a link to the video that is now going to be rebroadcast through my channel. The video in question is from Son of Neo, and it is to do not with Charlottesville but other things. But Son of Neo has some pretty good content, I think. PGC, pretty good content. There's that video, or that deal. Gonna now switch over for the other video, and we're resuming. C'est possible, hein? Il est un avocat. He is an avocado. Advocat. Speaks on behalf. Advocat. Is from horse's mouth. House's horse's mouth. For any. Right. Fair. Haven't seen. I'm going to pause this for a second. I'm half thinking aloud here, but I was talking earlier, the earlier stream from this evening, the one from last night, before the day switched, got into a bit of a discussion over frames per second, and where and why would anyone want to use 25 frames per second. Here's something to think about with 25 frames a second. What is the only useful factor of 25? And if you don't know what I mean by that, think about it. What's the only useful way to divide 25? What's factors into 25? 25 is 5 squared and then 1 in itself. So the only useful factor for 25 is 5, which means 25 frames a second is excellent if you like measuring things in fifth of a second intervals. Like 5 frames is a fifth of a second. 30 frames a second has an added bonus. Its factors include 5, 2, and 3. So I can get a half a second, a third of a second, a fifth of a second, a tenth of a second, a 15th of a second, a sixth of a second. Any combination of those factors I can therefore get. That's why 30 is fairly useful. Now, why would Russia Today broadcast footage that they got in 30 frames a second in 25? Well, one is they got to convert it if it's going to go on TV there to make sense. That's if it's going to play in real time. But if they played the number of frames they've got and they have 5 seconds of footage at 30 frames a second, then it's actually 6 frames a second, 6 frames or 6 seconds of footage they've got. I'll show you why. 5 times 30 equals 150. But 150 is also divisible by 25. 6 times 25 equals 150. That's the reason why 30 frames a second ends up 25 frames a second in I would imagine in Russia. So a purchased clip at 30 frames a second can be stretched out as much or as little as possible, as much as little as needed. You can make any 5-second clip into a 6-second clip simply by not converting it, but playing it at the wrong speed. And what I'm really saying here is, it makes 5 seconds worth of data look like 6 seconds worth of action. I.e., it's slightly slowed down. So there's another reason to want to use 25 frames a second. If you want the speeds to be lower for some strange, stupid reason I can't come up with. And I'm not going to provide you one. But I'll show you that if you're using 25 frames a second and a set number of frames, which is the same no matter what the clip, the original frame rate is the only one that's worth using. Please let me know. All right. Maybe. No. Is president. That happened. Oh, well, we know where this is going to land. I know where this is going to land. I've been saying for a while where this might land. If Rice has to be the one to take the fall, it's pretty obvious where the plane is going to land. Or rhymes with Banjinin. Fair. I would have thought it was going to land closer to Pennsylvania Avenue. The plane, I mean. What plane? Metaphorical plane. The plane doesn't exist. Air Force One. Okay. Okay. Right. Or anyone's name. Mm-hmm. I gotta wonder if it's a bug or an asset. Yes. And this is an interesting thing for Neo to do. I'm gonna stop here again for a second. I like what he does. I like his work. I like how he puts stuff together. Uh, he's asking a question that Trump has queued for, or at least, if Trump hasn't asked this question, Trump has asked for attention put to this question because at the very beginning, especially, he was very much, we got to stop these leaks. We got to stop these leaks. Right. Good question. Fair. God darn it! It did land close to it did actually land pretty close to Pennsylvania, didn't it? There's camouflage, right? Is with, with the camouflage, right? Is it discount dominant Keating? Mm, not. Uh, uh, CGs, man. Right. This is his own version of archive, is what he means. And then it's a good idea. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. This is one of their concrete bits. It's packed sand, a lot of water, but it's not concrete. Uh-huh. Names were redacted because they've been unmasked. They knew the names. Lord Frigger. Okay. Uh, yeah. Whose names were redacted. Yes. Bingo. Right. They were both peeked at the same moment in time and then redacted in order. Redacted when they needed them and didn't need them. Hang on, hang on. Uh-huh. Of Flynn's contacts. I kind of knew that would be a funny number. Since he would have. Hmm. This doesn't strike me as shocking. It's part of the reason why I'm watching it and not saying much about it. I'm accepting that a lot of the things which I wasn't watching Neo back 6 months ago. He's a relatively recent subscriber or subscribee, person I've subscribed to. New content creator for me, my point of view. Anyway, I'm going to go back in time and actually look at some of these past videos too that he's been putting up. Like the May 29th one. Because I was watching this story at the time, and many of the thoughts I had then are coming out, borne out. And he's not the only one that made those predictions about what would happen when Susan Rice admitted that she'd lied the first time around. We knew she lied. We knew she lied. In the same, and don't mean to interrupt them too much here, but this is my channel. Not only do we know that she lied, but well, what did it say about it? In the same sense that we knew that the media was lying about the polls 6 months before that, and even if the next few elections don't go the way that anyone calls them right now, even if there is a slight alteration in what potentially happens in the future, 2018, next year, or in 2020, whatever the case, knowing when we're fairly certain, we can illustrate why the media is already lying, or some line from the powers that be, PTB. We can recognize it. It's funny, I thought I would have thought it the other way around. I've been saying, it's going to land closer to the... Is it Edwards? No, Andrews. Excuse me. Should have been muted the mic. I'm here thinking about a decimate filter. I'm thinking aloud because I might as well, and I'm doing it on my channel, and I'm listening to Neo here, and it's sinking in, son of Neo. If I wanted to decimate the number of frames to get it back down again, how could I evenly decimate the total number, 1350? How could I evenly decimate the frames? In a sense, decimate to get rid of some percentage, to like remove them, to drop them, because they're not needed. Otherwise, you've got too many frames for the audio that you've got. The audio sample is a certain number of seconds and milliseconds long. Video is frames. So if you have too many frames for the seconds, you've got to drop some of them. How can you drop them fairly? If you were starting from a base time code of 30, divide them once by 2, so the 15 mark. Where the 15 mark is formed, you drop number 1, you drop number 15. Now, see, that's not going to work. I need to get rid of 5. I need to get rid of 5 with 1 division. If I drop 15, it's only 1. If I drop 2, I can get rid of 3. And they have to come evenly spaced throughout the rest of the frames. How do you divide the half into 3 by removing 3 pieces and get 3 equal pieces? It's a hell of a math problem. It involves 6th, I think. Probably. Anyhow, I thought I had a solution, was why I started, and as soon as I considered it again, I was like, oh, that's not going to work. I love the identifications. Unlikely. Yeah, where did you get that one, Rick? I think you might have got that one off of 4chan. I don't know. Maybe 4chan is where he sourced the image. That'd be a funny thing to like say. Yeah, source 4chan. Anybody knows it. Okay. Purger. Boom. Oh man. It doesn't though, so you can't call it perjury. We can't call it perjury because she hasn't testified under oath to the reverse being true and then been caught in telling the truth. It's the other way around. She lied in public first in the media. Could almost say, well, I had to do that because national security concerns, national concern, and it ain't. I take out the 10th frame, I take out the 20th frame, then I take out one between 1 and whatever was 10, 10 and whatever was 20, and 120 and whatever's 30. That's the decimate filter. That'll work. You gotta take 5 equally away in order to still maintain the motion across the range of frames for a second. And that's the frames of, and if you don't have the right frames, then the animation looks off and something's wrong. Plain and simple. I know. I'll type that down if anyone didn't hear. How would I decimate 30 frames? I'll write it down right here. Hell. Decimate 30 frames evenly to get 25 FPS, which will stay in sync. Drop number, not 1 but 10, and then 1 between 1 and 10, the halfway point between 1 and 9, 5. Number 10, number 15, number 20, number 25. Play order. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Funny. And so if you're watching, yeah, I gotta keep this idea down right now. Another problem. Footage ends up even more blurry. What the fuck? Answer. There's a keyframe at 1 or at 30 and 15. When you dropped 15, when you drop number 15, you drop an update frame. So the data for the next 5 to 10 frames, or 5 to 15 frames, will probably be blurrier. Boy, oh boy, I gotta tell you. So, yay. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, son of Newell. I really am. No joke on that one. Oh, Here I am rattling away about freak keyframes and math problems over on the side. I gotta tell you though, I do like mathematics. So let me go through this again. The Gilmore footage, if it does exist, I haven't seen it yet, in 25 frames a second. If it's being played without dropping frames, then it should be 54 seconds long. And there won't be enough audio to cover it. The audio won't match. Unless you decimate the frames. And it's not really decimate, it's a you take away a sixth of them, not a tenth. And a sixth in this case is only 5 frames. It's not very much. The base math though is funny. It's very funny to me when you look at why the numbers in this relationship here, 5 times 30 equals 150. But then 6 times 25 equals 150. The number sets converge up to this number 150, which is divisible by 3. It's a highly divisible number. So is 30 though. 30 is already a highly divisible number. The real difference here is that we get the squared 5. The relationships here, if we take the factors into consideration, start to become more clear. In my mind. This really says the same thing twice to get the same result. But anyhow, consequently, 45, when you look at it, if you divide by 5, which is the first number, the solution is 9. It's 9 seconds or something, right? If you divide it by 5, 9 tends to tell you something about this one over here. Not 9 seconds, but 45 divided by 5 is a 9, right? So if you add 9 to that, that's what you get. That's the actual difference in the total number of seconds. One frame to the other. One frame system to the other. If you don't drop the frames that you do have. I don't doubt you've got all the frames. Decimate the frames, or in this case, get rid of a sixth of them. What would it look like? The software, whatever software you're using, you could do this manually. You could write a little program to do this automatically on footage if you really wanted to. You'd want to know what the frame rate was of the original footage, and you'd also want to know how many keyframes. Keyframes are special frames. It's the only frames that get a full update. Every pixel in the frame is accounted for from photon data. But in between, depending on the camera you're using and the compression, some of those keyframes will determine a broad strokes drawing, same as I'm doing in Blender, for a curve. And then it fills in the broad strokes with its best guess, which it takes from a very fast pass of the camera, which approximates a lot of pixels, compresses it down and says, well, instead of getting every pixel here, we'll represent it with slightly larger cubes, or slightly larger squares. So it does get a little more blurry. If you drop the keyframes when you decimate them, the footage overall cannot help but get more blurry because it misses keyframes which it required. Sometimes you can see this happen on footage which has been taken off of one medium and put onto another one, and taken off and put onto another one. Digital especially, where there'll be a keyframe dropped in the middle of video and all of a sudden the entire frame changes color in some weird way, or there's been a keyframe overwritten with a funny set of values. Maybe there's a keyframe there where there wasn't one, and now the keyframe doesn't have the right data. Either way, if you drop the keyframes, it'll get more blurry. So you got to be careful with that. Decimate 30. Nobody asked this question. I'm answering it anyway because I think it's funny. You got to drop 5 frames is the solution every second in order to make sure that 45 seconds remains 45 seconds worth of footage, like worth of video at the different frame rate. And so you carefully pick which ones to drop. I thought first they dropped 5, 10, 15, 25, and 20 and 25. Then I realized, hey, that's not probably the best idea, because 15 is frequently a keyframe. YouTube wants a keyframe no longer than 15 apart. That's one of those base integers, one of those base frequency numbers. I actually broadcast in 15 a second for that purpose, so that the 15th one is always a keyframe, and anyway, and I might get a second one inside of there at the halfway point. Decimate 30 evenly, and I take away those numbers, and I might drop a frame, and it's going to be blurrier. Okay, how do I fix that? I could leave 5 and take 9 instead. I could leave 5, 10, take 14 one time and 16 the next. I might want to avoid the 5 and 10 numbers altogether and just make them all shift back 1. So I would take 4, 9, 14, 19, 24. And then there would be a large sequence of frames every second that should be pretty much in order and in sync, going from 26 right through until you get to 4. Almost 10 frames, right? 8. You get 8 frames for free before you drop another one, which might look a little bit funny at spots because there's these drop frames, but not much. The reason you got to drop frame is to allow for the actual difference in frame rate from shutter speed, the 30 frames per second. And so the actual motion, which is being compressed down to 25 frames, is still not 100% correct. It's going to be updated when that drop frame occurs, so that the next frame that drops is closer to what it should be at if it had certainly jumped forward in time. So every time you come to a drop frame, you're going to see these little jumps. You can't explain them. Why did it jump a little too far that time? More than it was moving, and all of a sudden it jumps almost twice that distance, and bam, it seems to be where it should be. Has it got like a teleportation drive? What? Right? I don't know. It's been decimated, I think. Funny names. I was thinking about this one too. I'm going to show this one in Blender. This is a crazy one. Yeah, it's not crazy. It's, again, mathematics. This is a fun one. Crazy fun to my point of view. Here's the curve. For GK in his camera motion. I'm going to be nice. I'll be nice and cavalier about it. Rapid changes for X and Y value mean will be show like an acceleration curve, but so will changes in rotation. But what's an acceleration and what's a constant speed? What is the difference between the two of them, right? And to best illustrate that one, is it possible? Is it possible that I have chosen to look for Challenger the moment that it's under the underpass? That would be funny. Huh. No way. Huh. Can't see from this resolution or distance. This is adequate sign that my eyes need to be checked. Ah, I see him. No, I don't. Ford is there. He must be in the road, right? Oh, there he is. Let me get the Challenger. Wish I had time to watch. Come back now another time. Very interesting. Thank you. Nice to see you, though. All the same, Pat. I don't know if I've seen your name before, so welcome. And welcome back anytime you do get a chance. Here's the thing I want to show you. Accelerations versus constant speeds. I could consider 0, not moving at all, a constant speed. And it's flat curve. Or it's a flat line. Curves indicate a change in speed. Not an actual speed, but an acceleration. The steeper the curve, the greater the acceleration, and then the resulting line, if it's straight, if it goes straight and doesn't curve anymore, that will be a velocity, therefore a speed. A constant speed. If you're going downhill, maintaining a constant speed means you got to ride your brake. If you don't ride your brake, you're going to keep going faster, which means a curve in this direction. Where it keeps going faster and faster this way, you have to scale out or in to see just how fast. But it tends towards, exponential curves tend that way very, very quickly. This is a deceleration curve, which consistently and quietly, or not quietly, consistently goes down to what is like a flat horizontal line on the graph. Meaning stopped. Not moving, doesn't have a speed, it just have this location in space. As the location reverses, like as he reverses, whoever is in Challenger, up the hill, it's not that he's literally going up this hill, but his acceleration is going from this value in space to that value in space, and it indicates that he starts slower and goes faster toward it, because the curved line, which is the straightest line between them, the fastest he could pretty much get there, is a straight line between the 2 points. That's his max. Well, it's not his maximum speed, but you could conceivably get there faster if you continually put on more speed pointing directly at it, right? But on this graph, this point in space and this point in space, or this point in space down here and this point in space right here, essentially where he is already, close to it, maybe back here a little more. The curve indicates that the longer it stays this way, the slower it's going. And if it goes slow all the way to here, in order to get to this point in space at the same point in time, it would have to go faster to get there, which is a curve or a line going up this way, like a gradient, like a slope. Can't use a ruler in this one quite so easily. There's no good indication tools other than my mouse. Mathematics is really neat to me for that reason. It has got a use, and I've known that it had a use. Never much had a use for it, except for in technical applications like this. And I find this way more fascinating and satisfying than building like a model railway or something to scale. If I may be quite frank, I'm not saying anything bad about that. Merely that the applications of a computer software to do this kind of thing for graphic purposes, but at the same time doing it with some kind of accuracy or attention to the detail of it, that perhaps we can use some of the data points gathered by things like video footage that's also going to be displayed and indicate where this might actually be in space and time for the purposes of, you know, establishing an argument later, which I don't care if it's one way or the other. I don't have a preference for the way that argument's going to be made, but I definitely do not believe that some of the official story accords with reality. And therefore, that story should be updated, if nothing else. And to make that easier, I think something like this should be done, and I'm going to do it. It could be done. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm entirely wrong about it. I'm open to suggestion. If you think it could be improved. Suffice it to say, this, what you're seeing the stream in, is 15 frames a second, and now I'm going, using my mouse to, using my keyboard to go frame by frame through how I've animated this, to indicate how I think more or less the vehicles are presented to one another, and that this gray vehicle is not the Tundra. Tundra will be back here, and I haven't placed her yet. This is the gray SUV, which was parked behind the red maroon minivan. There's the pause, there's the acceleration back uphill. Now, if I'm right about this, I got a fisheye camera overlooking the scene. If I find his right angle and consider the scene from his right angle down on there, this curve should match, or this motion we're observing here of the Challenger or reversing away from the accident. That curve should be, or this motion, even tracked in 2D with just a plane, not even a block. I could put a couple blocks for cars and stuff too, but anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time putting detail into things which is only going to be looked at from a mini-map way far away, like you're looking at it on GPS or something. It doesn't need a lot of detail. It merely needs to have a reference in perspective in space, so that perhaps when we consider it, the footage next to it or even overlaid on it, it would coincide. Like, oh yeah, that looks to be about right. That is the speed he's going in space. Here I am in space, but at ground level. Here I am up in the parking lot a little bit. Here I am spinning up that way, or moving forward, and now I'll roll down. I need to be over here more, eh? Okay. Here's the tricky part, getting this to orient right. I need to go forward more. Oh yeah. I gotta be across the road almost to get this to work, so that I can spin myself down into where I want to be for perspective. I could use an actual camera to do this easier too, which was part of my plan. Okay, right about here and over a bit. So in perspective here, I kind of get Jeremiah Nupp's view. Maybe a little bit higher than him, and certainly he gets away around it off to one side. But I can see the car going away. I can see Ford coming up the way up there. Ford gets to see this. He stops for it. He just kind of merrily catches it. We can see the Challenger reversing all the way up the hill from here. If we were able to get to the top of the building, probably. And could see around the corner of this building, because this one doesn't have any real perspective applied to it yet. Or maybe never. Again, it's a top-down map. But I could get a sense of some of the speeds involved here. This also doesn't show any kind of elevation in real space, which the more I think about it, the less I like it. Because there's an attention to detail thing about that too, and that is that this is all taking place on a hill. I have my perfect little world where I can draw curves and get things to move at the right place and time, but what I can't explain easily until I put time in to actually model it, if I ever do, I'm not planning on doing it. Although I think I did see some people seem to express interest or a similar, some people had said that perhaps that would be a good idea to put the actual terrain of the land in here. Which means that the point the Challenger is at the moment in time is at the top of a big hill. So it's up here somewhere more. It's got a Z coordinate, which I'm not currently mapping. And there's another hill over here, which you can see down on the lower areas, but not quite past this building. So some of this is a valley line. There's a rail line here. That'll tell you where the elevation probably stays the same for the longest period over the long haul. Look for that line. Stick on that ridge, buddy. You can't go wrong. Anyhow, we don't even have trains here anymore. I know that. So, as a consequence of all of this rambling that I've been doing here, I'm getting kind of thirsty, and I'm also going to want to have a short break before I get into doing some serious keyframing. Probably going to turn some Cult of Nick or something on in the background and listen while I merrily keyframe away. But before we get there, one last look at this curve. I still have Challenger selected. And I'm going to make sure that I've got the Y location as well as the X location selected. Left to right motion, and then the change in direction on Market Street. His curve on Market Street is going to be different than his curve up the hill. He accelerates at some kind of speed. I'd have to measure from the top keyframe here. Like I could get an idea of what his point-to-point speed is, maybe between here and here, when he's at a constant acceleration up the hill. Either getting a little faster, a little slower due to gravity, or whether he's letting off on his accelerator or not. Or this part here, when he definitely does go faster when he's on a flat surface. So that's the first part of the hill, the flat surface of the mall. the part of the surface of the mall which starts tipping upwards and slows him down because he's bumping over and grinding nose a bit. And then the rest of the hill where he establishes like a basic speed from this point onward. He's building up from that point onwards, what I mean. So he's pulling up the hill with what is essentially now a front wheel drive car, since he's using his wheels in the rear to do the driving backward. It's not steering from the front or from the rear, but it's pulling from the rear, like bringing him up the road as if it was a front wheel drive car going up a hill. So the curve is pretty much the same. The gearing is different, but it is a different kind of gear or different kind of curve. When he gets to the top of the hill, though, he backs back and then he goes forward a little bit, but immediately his Y coordinate flattens out because it's not changing much. He's now moving east to west, which is an X location in space, not a Y. And his speed, when I calculated most of the trip to 4th Street at the top on Market, he was making a similar speed to that. He didn't have to make any more of a speed than that. Well, that's a really bad part of the curve to show it, maybe. Actually, it isn't. This is distracting as well. Wow, that seems to be about the same as that. It is the same as that. This is when he arrives on the mall crossover. This is the speed which he does across the mall crossover. And this is the average speed which I've allowed him around the rest of the map. Assuming that he can maintain that speed and be in control of his vehicle and not be stopped for driving too slowly. He could have driven from the last time Ford saw him more or less at that speed for all that length of time, i.e. between here and here with no variation in speed. Right to the time that he passes in front of Ford's camera prior to the 79-second gap, which is currently marked on this sequence. This 79 seconds, that's a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess we can see how it works. 15-second gaps are here. Another 9 seconds, more or less, after this point. But for this long period, 15, 30, so there's a minute. There's 2 minutes. There's 3 minutes. And if I take back that quarter and add it to here to include the run down the hill, there's the 3-minute mark. And this is when he was passing Ford. 2 minutes to that whole set of events. Well, 2 minutes from the time we last see him, when he's still fairly near Ford's position. And then 3 minutes when he does an outside loop and comes back near to Ford's position again, but now he's to the north. Ford Fisher. I'm going to continue to use Ford as my base time. If you need something to really synchronize against, I'm going to use Ford's point in space and time during this sequence, which I know is after a hell of a lot of things have already happened that day. Including like a whole bunch of people marching around from various organizations left, right, and center. I'm not talking even about people who had applied for permits to do something. I mean uniformed. Also have a rotation for Challenger. Not quite sure where the rotation curve is right now. I'll hit home and see. Oh, I've got to turn it on. There's Challenger's rotation curve included. Only when it makes changes or curves in the road do we see a change in that one. But an indicated 90 degree turn, a 90 degree turn, a 90 degree turn, 3 left turns, all visible on the graph. Once you see what it is that you're reading. So there's 3 left turns that he has to make. 1 and 2 around, which takes him from the east and west coordinates. That's what reverses him. That's the 180 degrees that he needs to go back the other direction on market. There's the 90-degree turn that gets him on to 4th. These places are all marked in time, in space. I can change the timing of them if I ever find out more data, which allows me to fill out this curve with something other than that. But for all intents and purposes, this is a maximal curve for this kind of travel and distance and time. When you consider that he has to go to some furthest point and then make his way back, he crosses the distance, he crosses the intersection at 4th and Water, making that his start line to get back again. And so therefore, it stretches out this way because there's no other way for it to be compressed. I think this is the maximal curve in the simplest explanation for what happened, expressed in a mathematical form, which, if maybe confusing, not difficult to be understood if you see what it is when it corresponds to on the map. In particular, a literal left-hand turn here in the map, or in the curve on the coordinate value for rotation, will correspond with a left-hand turn in space, which changes his direction. His x value starts to stay the same, and his y value changes, followed by another left turn, which then flips his direction. His y value stops changing, or it doesn't change as much because it's a east. How is it? It's kind of like you're going market a little bit to the northwest. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe I read my own map wrong. It's here anyway. But yeah. How you doing, Warp? So that's the basic explanation. That this, I think this graph represents Challenger's simplest explanation, and therefore it's in itself represents some kind of useful data which has been gleaned from as much video evidence as we already got, or as anybody has, so we can kind of use this as a way of checking any solution against any other solution, because the solution should have something like this in it to account for what available data there is. Not to say that we all got to sit down and plot the same graphs out, but if someone else comes up with a novel way which then will plot the same graph out, I'll be happy. And if it can give me a better plot for this graph, this I say, this is the optimal solution. If he went an average speed for distance, is 5 minutes a long enough period of time to cover the distance to get back to do this, to do that part? And the answer appears to be yes to me. And then there's this, if there's anything which is mystifying, is this discontinuity in the map, in the graph. I was thinking about how to put this so that it is very, very clear. If there's something which bugs me, it's a discontinuity in the map. And in this case, there's 3 lines which remain totally static and don't change for a long time. That's just not the way that it was. And it's 79 seconds long. Or maybe it's, I thought maybe, oh yeah, I'm counting it wrong. No, maybe I am. 15, 30, 45, 60. There's 70. There's 70, 60, there's 75, there's 90. So it's some distance where there's no available data for what Challenger's doing. Yeah, that's the plot, Manfred. Yeah, indeed, that's the entire plot as far as I'm concerned, like a simplest explanation for Challenger, start to finish. Going from available data from Ford Fisher mostly. Although Gilmore is what gives me all of this data here. Gilmore is this entire section of the graph on this side of the graph. Anything after this discontinuity, I call it discontinuity, it's a flat area, flat line, because there is nothing giving me data. I can take some guesses as to what happens past this point. And I know from Brendan Kelly I can make some guesses too about what happens in the last 15 seconds of that point. But that still doesn't cover a minute of time and that's discontinuity. If you want a continuity error, in other words, I'll maybe flip that around. Discontinuity error, or a continuity error right here. This doesn't make any sense. There's people coming up that road. The Camry goes into the intersection right before the Challenger does, and it's already taken its time. The Camry's curve for this last bit down is way different. If I may be allowed to demonstrate, I'll show the Camry. Camry's curve comes from Ford Fisher. I can't overlay the two of them right away, but I guess I could if I very carefully clicked them. I'll do it this way. There's the Camry. There's Challenger at a later point in time. Oh, I gotta get that right. There's Camry. There's, oh shoot. There's Challenger. There's Camry. There's Challenger's sets of curves here. Challenger's is the one with the steep line. Camry is the one with the slightly less steeply inclined line. Camry's going slower through that intersection than what Challenger will. And that's Camry's basically maximum speed down the hill, followed by a slow stop by the minivan. The lines are the points in space for each of the coordinates that I'm measuring. I'm measuring a coordinate sets of 3. Yeah, they're plotted curves for X, Y location and rotation. So I can show that everything that needs to be known about this assumption, this set of assumptions, is here, including left and right turns, because I'm mapping rotation. So when the car makes a left turn from water onto 10th, there's a left turn, the curve flattens out, and then goes over to the Y coordinate, so you can go north. Y goes from a southerly coordinate to a northerly coordinate in a span of time. And then another left turn, Y starts to flatten out because he's going along water, and it's a much slower progression north to south, or south to north on water when you're headed west, and his curve switches to west. And it's been given an average speed to cover a distance. So that represents the simplest explanation. They didn't have to do any faster than this particular speed. In fact, if anything, we could consider this speed to be a little bit slower than normal or regular average, like traffic flow speed. So assuming that this didn't cause any eyebrows to raise or any cops to say, pull over, what have you been smoking? Because you're driving too slow. Now, same period of time for the Camry to go down from the intersection when Ford films it, and the Challenger to do that hill. Challenger's doing that speed, whereas this speed is what Camry's doing. That's only in the Y coordinate, top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. Camry goes through about half the speed when we actually measure it, or when I measured it. And this is the speed which I gave him for the rest of the trip. That curve. That's the curve that slope is the slope which I used for the average speed the rest of the way around. Let me see if I got the numbers still here. So I used the calculator to do the thing. Would 13 miles an hour be too slow to be doing the whole trip? Would that not cause like eyebrows to raise for most of that trip? But even so, that's the speed that he had to average to do it. He only needed to average 13 miles an hour. He could have easily jackrabbited a few times, stopped, and then started again, and still been able to do the fastest trip. So this is the simplest explanation I can think of from available data. Left turns are here, right turns would be the opposite direction. So one of these would be north, one of these would be west, one of these would be south, one of these would be east. And then whatever way I scale them. I was thinking about saying this too. Since some curves, when you stretch them out, become so very, very easy, like it's easily to say, well, geez, not much difference between the Camry and Challenger there, and there ain't. Or even there, but you can see it more between this line and this line. That's Camry here, and that's Challenger. But this is what normalization is all about. The term normalization means you take a small curve and then find some way of presenting it so that it looks more normal. That also means that you're stretching some things out of proportion, maybe. Or you're focusing in on an area which is a little too small. So what I'm doing in this case is limiting the particular frame range, and since rotations are going to be around like a 360-degree point which rotates, like repeats, I'm always going to be winding in back and forth between about 180, so that's maybe the maximum value for both. Map might be a lot bigger than 180 units. So that's the danger when I'm stretching the graph around to try to figure out what some things are. Even so, there are like good places where you can see clearly that one slope is meant to represent this one. That's pretty much his average speed. I gave him that average speed. And Camry is going slower than that, which I think represents people in the road down there already. And if that's the case, I don't think Camry was meant to be there. The Tundra was. Or it wouldn't have been there. Oh, this way. Hit the wrong keys. So when the blue line is going straight up, that represents no forward speed. No. Actually, no. When the blue line is going straight up, that represents a change in direction from a constant, because it's rotation, from a constant rotation value, say 180. A change in that rotation, turn to 100 or turn to 90 or whatever. But at this point in time, it's turning from market south, so it's actually 270 down to 0 or whatever. That would be the value, or 270 down to 180. That's a left turn though. It's always like the turns are marked left or right in this case. If I turn it right, the right turn will be marked in the opposite direction. That represents a change in value over a space of time. So during each frame, there'll be a diff west. West, 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 west. Changing from west represent a very, very fast acceleration. Anything which is left and right is to do with time, location and time. Anything which is up and down is to actual value, some physical value. It's XY graphing over time. So the X value of the graph itself, like just the actual orientation of the graph. X is time. Each one is a frame. So X value 1 is frame number 1. And then the values themselves are discretely plotted, a curve each. So one for X location, one for Y, yes. So the value on the Y scale is whatever value it has on the map. That's what we're plotting against. We can look at this like a seismograph even. But what I've been saying here is that there's a discontinuity, from my point of view, between here and here. And it's 79 seconds long, and we don't know what happens except for what Ryan Kelly says. And Ryan Kelly says only for that much, if anything. Y is speed, yeah. Y over time. Speed is distance over time, so it's a graph of a slope one way or the other. constant speed won't be flat. That'll be a 0 speed or an unchanging speed sometimes. But if it's flat on this graph, it means 0 speed. And if it's sloped, it means some kind of speed in a direction. Like, so that's a speed to the south. Whereas this red line is a speed to the west. And this red line, a speed to the east. They're always a speed. If you want to show a change in speed, a deceleration, then the curve will flatten to 0. Or it will curve up to a higher speed. But then there's a max speed. There's a speed limit. No, man, I'm not going to keep explaining it to you. I've explained it clearly several times. If you don't understand it, it's because you don't want to. I also did a whole bunch of math stuff. Greater slope is more speed, right? And therefore, Challenger does the intersection faster, which I know from looking at it, than the Camry does. But Challenger's speed at the intersection of 4th and Main, on Ford Fisher's video early, the first time, is sufficient as an average speed to get him all the way around the map since the last time he saw Ford. How about that? He could follow that same speed the whole way around the map. And it would have given him enough time to do it in 5 minutes flat, which blows my fucking mind, but that's average. That's what an average speed gets you. But it's the simplest explanation is probably not the correct one. I know that it's a bad assumption, but it's an assumption which does adequately prove to me it's possible. Oh, it's okay. You don't have to talk. You don't have to talk. I don't have to talk to myself. I need to take a break. I need to like calm down and start keyframing. That's cool. But yeah, I did a whole bunch of math early in the video, talking about 25 frames versus 30 frames, and why there's tricky numbers involved with those. It means you got to drop some frames, otherwise it goes out of sync. Like or they don't use the audio at all in RT. I don't know. But yeah, I did a whole bunch of math on that one earlier. The good news is I do have some updated stuff for while I take a short break. I mean, got something else to listen to other than what you've heard already. I'll turn this up for you again. I'll start it over. This is better with the background.
Slowly recycling down to extinction? Not really. Countdown. We're gonna count down to what, David? It's like in chess. First you strategically position your pieces, then when the timing's right, you strike. See? They're positioning themselves all over the world, using this one signal to synchronize their efforts. In approximately 6 hours, the signal's gonna disappear and the countdown's gonna be over. And then what?
A historic and unprecedented event has occurred. Question of whether or not we're alone
Show off.
has been answered. Although it's understandable that many of us feel a sense of hesitation or even fear, we must attempt to reserve judgment. He says he's your husband. It's occurring all over the world. It's caused undue injury and loss of life. This is not how we learn.
Here's a trick song. It's tricky because I'm probably going to have to overlay this with other things in order to make it really work. All right. Last time. Oh, right now. Ah, 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 ah. It's a total ripoff, but it's close. I mean, say ripoff. It's close to traditional nowadays, but not quite. Is it Pierre Ferro? Cool stuff. Dun Okay, yeah. Shit, I forgot again. How did I say that then? Oh fuck, man, that was like in and out, just like in one ear, out the other. No. Dun, 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 dun. That's it. That's the big theme. That's the like action theme. Good thing happens, the good guys win. That theme. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, name that theme, and perhaps I'll, I don't know, dedicate a song or a video to you. I don't know. Name that theme if you know the theme. Theme song belongs to, I think John Barry composed it, actually. I said that at the beginning. I must have said so. Ha ha ha. Greater Slope. Can you track it in a TMZ video? From when GK loses it in a crowd. Do you mean the Challenger? Because at this moment in time I probably don't need to. If I was to synchronize Warp, if I was to synchronize the TMZ video, like the, what's it called, the one which on YouTube is sometimes called the car plows into number 3, that one. If I was to drop that in right now, I probably wouldn't have to use any more data, because I've already got most of the curve from Gilmore. I'm using Gilmore as a yo-yo and Rebel Z and Faith as the thing which marks the yo-yo at the bottom, which is this part of the curve. If I only select Challenger, oh wait, no, that's not Challenger. Challenger, he's a coming. Challenger's way the heck back. Here's Challenger. Challenger's curve here in the yo-yo, you can see it. In his yo-yo for his acceleration down the hill and stuff. That was in the last video I took real good care to make sure that this was on the money with Gilmore. Gilmore makes sure that the start points are right and that the initial speed is correct. But then what we did was we used his initial speed and said, hey, what if he maintained that initial speed whole way down the hill? It's down a hill. He doesn't even need to touch his accelerator. He should gain a little speed, but maybe he used his brakes, and we can see him using his brakes. So, but even so, using his initial speed, let's just see what speed he goes. If he doesn't change the speed whatsoever, continues down the hill. And if he doesn't change his speed, he arrives there too early for the events that I'd already timed for the car and the minivan. He arrived there too early. He had to have slowed down. Had to have. So this curve indicates that he did slow down to make sure that everything else matches up with the drone overhead and Jeremiah and the two people next to him, next to the car and the minivan. That all lines up proper. Because, and Gilmore's braking, the brakes that you can see him, it's all in there. Take down the cone window. Sorry. Here's the yo-yo. Down here. I'll go through it again if you want, since I did make that mistake. Here you go. The yo-yo. Gilmore gives me all of this top data. We use the top 2 points to extrapolate if he continues with the same speed. Doesn't change speed, doesn't slow down, doesn't stop. So the first part of the curve on the green line, I'm going to make this bigger just so it's a little easier to see again. Let me normalize that. Anyway, the first part of the curve we use is the exact speed for the entire time. Tried him down the hill and he arrives too early. He has to slow down, so there's a braking maneuver applied. And then a slight acceleration as he hits his... You can hear him revving up a bit. But as he gets farther down the hill, he can't help but go slower because of what's presented to him. So by the time that he hits the Camry, and that this gray vehicle here, that ain't the Tundra. That's the gray SUV. I haven't moved it yet. I'm waiting to move it in the next video. The Tundra is somewhere closer to here. Like Ford sets up across the street from him, right? Tundra's up the road a bit. So by the time he actually impacts Camry, he's past Tundra. And I can account for that because I can see that happen in Rebel or Faith, one or the other. And then I can see the rest of the curve from that point onward. So everything on the bottom part is on the money at the bottom of the yo-yo. So I got the top of the yo-yo right, and I got the bottom of the yo-yo right. And I got Gilmore to get me at the top again. So at the end of the yo-yo, this accords well with what the drone sees and what with, what's his face? Jeremiah sees after. And also the start point is determined partly by Faith and partly by Rebel. So all those points accord for that part of the yo-yo. Goes back up the hill. According to Gilmore. This is Gilmore, right? When he gets to the flat, what happens? When he's on the flat, he bounces once as he comes over the bump. But when he's on a flat, his acceleration curve goes up because it can. So for a short period, he accelerates before he bottoms out again. And when he does, he gets to his acceleration curve the rest of the hill. We don't see him for most of this part, but we can take a guess as to what the curve looks like because we can see him when he arrives at the top and starts to turn into traffic the opposite direction, well, back east. And Gilmore sees this part. So everything on the yo-yo is pretty good. But then this Verduncan 15-second thing that Kelly introduces, I got to put that in sooner or later. That data might be highly speculative, might be highly wrong. I don't know if the timing fits at all, but it seems to me if he says 10 to 15 seconds, that might mean there's a 20-second gap of time to account for, or as low as 10 seconds. And nothing more. It could only be a 10-second period that he gets to go down range here and accelerate, like from wherever he is on the hill, he gets to accelerate down, still meet this curve without causing too big a discontinuity, other than the fact that he's got to go across the flat at some point. And that's at some point before Gilmore starts filming. Well, Gilmore catches him in the bottom end of the flat, just as he's getting clear of this part. So that's for the brakes. That's the Tundra, somewhere around there, followed by that. And then Ford manages to barely catch him. Gilmore's still filming up the road. Say what? Warp Drive? No, Ryan Kelly is the photographer. Kelly got testimony. Kelly was asked, how did he get the picture? So what Kelly says is, this is the funniest. I mean, I find this funny. I really do. Funny as in, like, not haha, but this is what I got to deal with, like, for putting up the, for trying to make it fit. Try to figure out if I can use it as a data point or not. Let's just assume this ruler unit is Ryan Kelly for a second. According to Kelly, long before this point, and before this point, according to Kelly, he's standing here when the vehicle goes up. He passes in front. There's like a 10 to 15 second gap somewhere in here. I don't know if he means when he's accelerating up the hill. He must mean down here somewhere. So he accelerates up the hill, backwards, stops. He goes in front of him during that. And within 10 to 15 seconds of this whole thing happening, he's going down again. Oh, I don't think it's on Gilmore. That 10 to 15 second thing where he crosses in front of him? No, it ain't. Gilmore starts after Kelly goes from this side of the street to that side of the street. And if Gilmore is the one filming it, then that occurs first, then he crosses, and then he takes the picture. He says he crosses in front of the Challenger. So does he mean when it's coming down? Or does he mean when it's going up before it comes down again? Or what? To me, it means when this Challenger is going up here to go down a second time, then he crosses. Goes down a second time, he goes out. Takes his picture. Challenger reverses, he gets out of the way or pushes over to the side. I don't know what he does. I've been looking at Gilmore with a jaded eye. Not because of Gilmore, but because I gotta actually pay attention. That there might be something here that I'm not quite seeing that I should. Similar, I don't think I've really accepted that. I think Ford should be looking pretty much at Gilmore, and yet I've never managed to pick him out definitively. Now I know what to look for a little better because I've looked at his footage closer, and I can see when I track his camera, I'll know what to look for. But other than that, woo-ay, Mr. Gilmore. Got one called Jeremiah Reformat for Gilmore. This is footage straight from Twitter. So Gilmore sees this moment onward and catches Kelly afterward. Not now, but after he turns a second time, when Kelly's still snapping pictures of Challenger reversing up the hill. Kelly means he's on this side of the street, comes around and gets a shot. But he knows he's got something coming at him to get a shot at. Since it reversed up the hill and he passed in front of it. Which is the front side, right? Does he mean he passed in front of it as it was reversing, or he passed in front of it after it reversed in front of him? Because the front is pointed down the hill. And then afterward. Blue jeans, helmet or something, backpack. There is a couple seconds when he has time to get out of the way here. I mean, Kelly. That's him. Has to be, I guess. I'll double check with the shirt. It's a bit of a speed bump evident there, and then there's another one really evident on the other side. So I say that he gets his best chance of a clean acceleration till about there, and then he's got to negotiate that before settling into his acceleration the rest of the way. Kind of becomes a front wheel drive deal since he's reversing, but I've never seen Gilmore on the corner. Gilmore I've not seen. Can't say that I can put a face. I've seen his Twitter picture and stuff, though. I know what to look for. Seems like he got a beard or some shit. I can't say that I've ever seen Gilmore. Shall I have a look at Ford Fisher quickly just to see? Here's Ford. Don't turn off Faith, don't want her. Turn off Reb, don't need him. Don't take that personally, anybody. Kelly on the corner. Exactly. Kelly's on the corner. It should be hard to miss. Kelly runs from the corner, runs back to the corner. The thing to keep in mind is that Ford is not running full tilt, and he's not using the high-powered camera to see stuff forward with. Maybe I should select Ford. This way I can jump in his keyframes nice and simple. Places where like there's marks like this. We know when the car goes around the corner, Gilmore is right on the corner. And I'm motion stabilizing at that moment in time too, so we should have a good chance of seeing him from a distance. Since the motion stabilization is trying to keep up with where the car is. So he's somewhere over here. Oh, right on the corner maybe, behind this other person? Yeah, you can see someone moving around, ducking around. She's still in the corner there, so we should see... Yeah, we can even kind of make out where the photographer went over that way. But otherwise, we're left to deal with something like this. Like he goes back to the corner to start filming, right? He gets the car up on... So he's somewhere... No, he's not that far. Yeah, he is. He's one of these people over here, right? Filming up the street. Behind this dude. And then after he films up, he turns around and films down. Ford starts cutting across here. Because pink bandanas spotted him or... picked him out. Look. Is that Gilmore? Or is he down the street by now? Second green shirt. There. Green plaid shirt. In here? I would have thought that one first. I guess he might be visible in Gilmore though. Lucky us, we can get everything. That's Faith Goldie's stream starting there. Boat Depository and Car Attack is Gilmore. I need to replace one for the other there. Back up, I will. What's this one? In. I'm changing clips for a second. This is what Gilmore sees at this moment. There's Ford. Two green shirts. Kelly is the second green shirt. Hang on. The one out closer to the corner? Like the one out closer to where the sunlight is, not the one tight to the corner? See the straps on his toes. Oh. Ah. Gotcha. I know he does turn around and go down the street a bit. Green plaid shirt. See straps on him too, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, he got a beard, don't he? I saw that in his picture too. So behind blue shirt right now, but anywho, picking them out. Hide that one again for a moment, or for several moments. Don't need Ford. Want my GK, want it now. GK the camera controller. GK the camera move. So the speed curves are really only useful for the cars, if you ask me. They're not so useful for people, other than indicating that there's a right turn, that they turn their camera from left to right, from right to left. Or in this case, right to left. Sorry. From wherever it is, they turn to the right and then to left after, and then very slowly turning right. Quick turn to the right. Slow turn to the right. Quicker turn to the left. Slow turn to the right. And that's GK. And he's got a yo-yo too, but this one is in his rotations. Anytime he does a flip around in the street, does a 360 or a 180. That kind of stuff is the thing you see on his curve. That's how far I am with his curve. I needed some cars to use as a reference. Because, hey, he can't just walk straight through here as much as he might want to. And, of course, when I got to this point last night, I realized that I'd stopped at everyone's favorite moment. Maybe not everyone, but one of those moments that just stands out for its shining displays. This is a challenging one because it's a slow move through a crowd with lots of left and right motion and changes in direction. He makes his way to the corner so that he's behind the line of the accident. I'll go back to the previous keyframe and start forward again. I might well turn on some background stuff to keep me distracted, like as is me want. I don't want for much, love, but I wants for that. Kind of blows my mind, though. Average speed for the whole trip could be as low as 13 or 14 miles an hour, which would stand out, I think. It's not exactly a far distance, and thus a very slow distance, or very slow speed for the amount of time required. 5 minutes. Damnable thing, really. Damnable. Downloads. Yeah, I got something here waiting for listening purposes. 82 of the podcast, Cult of Nick. Picking up where we left off.
Because some of the things that I've heard, I mean, I remember someone once saying to me, yeah, Catcher in the Rye, right? That rhymes with FBI.
Yeah.
So that proves it.
Yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't work, obviously. I mean,
No, I mean, as I said, the Catcher in the Rye.
Just to give you an idea of what we're listening to, this is a guy who's an expert in the assassination of John Lennon, intercut with an interview with the person who provides music for the Cult of Nick, Zero Friends Productions.
Has featured in other assassinations and murders and so on. And it is... for the people who believe in sort of FBI conspiracy and hitmans and so on, it does offer a sort of a text that they claim is easily sort of implanted into somebody being brainwashed.
Right. It's
a sort of text that is easily, used for that purpose. Holden is a sort of adolescent character. He's 16, 17. He's lost. He's lonely. He's angry with the world, and so on. So, the idea of the Manchurian candidate who needs a trigger planted in their brain to sort of get them to do something, that text is seen as a sort of very suitable text.
Really? So actually, I'm wrong to laugh. There's a possibility of this kind of stuff because it matches up.
I put myself through a degree in philosophy when I was younger, right, and came out of that quite disenchanted with academia, I suppose, and didn't really do anything else about it. And then eventually came across books like that, and it was kind of like, oh right, this is all the stuff that I was kind of interested in, sort of talking about or whatever, or thinking about at the time, and it's kind of quite out of the scope of academia, really. And so it was quite a thing to just come across it all and then, have a good read.
You see, I would say the distinction between you and I is that you would be more in the mould of what I would describe as a kind of a classic occultist, meaning that you don't really talk about it to anyone or explain any of it or get involved in any of it, whereas I'm probably the opposite in that as soon as I hear an idea that blows me away, everyone within a square mile of me has heard about it.
No, I don't know about that. I mean, I did try and proselytise a bit, but I found it kind of, people had a lot of resistance to it. Really. I kind of, for instance, there's a one of the Ramsey Dukes books, SSOTBME, which is subtitled An Essay on Magic, and it's quite short. And you could probably just sort of study that book for ages because it's got so many great ideas in it and stuff. Or it's just, it'll sort of turn your world upside down a bit if you're not coming from that angle in the first place. And I kind of I sort of thought, oh, I should read that. That's like that's totally a good starting point, and it'll, if you're coming from a mainstream orthodox sort of point of view, I suppose, and you watch too much television or whatever, then it's like, it'll be a good starting point, and it'll make a lot of sense if you've got any any kind of disposition towards the magical way of thinking or artistic way of thinking, and that for that matter, and it's a good starting point. But and I tried to give it to loads of people, and most people were just like, really, yeah, right, okay, and just not interested, didn't read it, and the conversation went dead.
What got me into it was a combination of...
It could be that I'm just not very good at selling things to people.
Well, I want you to tell me a little bit about the significance of the number 9 in their lives.
Right. Now, for John Lennon, number 9 was his number. It's like everything of significance in his life he saw as a sort of reflection of number 9. You know, even down to the bus he used to get on to go to school and things like that was I think it was the 72 or the 27. I can't remember which now, but the two numbers added up to 9 and things like this.
So he was into numerology then?
Yeah. Oh, yes, he was. I mean, John Lennon was big into numerology, I Ching, superstition, the supernatural, all sorts of things like that.
And I know they did a song called Revolution 9.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what exact date did John Lennon die on, though?
British time, it was the sort of 9th of December.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I've got it down as the 10th of December, but that's American time.
Yeah. Yeah.
God. So the number 9 was significant in John Lennon's life. What about in Chapman?
No, not that I know of. No.
So they don't have equal destinies there?
No. Well, not that I have sort of turned up, no.
Uh-huh.
Going back to Lennon, the biggest sort of key to all this is his song Dream Number 9, or Number 9 Dream, which is a song that came to Lennon sort of from nowhere. He woke up with it in his head, ringing around his head. And I see it in my take on all this as a sort of a premonition of the murder. It was a premonition dream of his own murder.
Really? So he recorded a song called, was it Dream Number 9?
Yes.
And you believe that song is actually a premonition from John Lennon's subconscious?
Yes, yeah.
Why? What gives you what makes you think that?
It's about walking down a street, somebody called out his name, which is exactly what Chapman did. Called out Mr. Lennon. John Lennon turned. The two spirits dancing so strange is the sort of hook line in the song. I think the two spirits are Lennon and Chapman. They're dancing together. And then the lyrics go, on a river of sound, through the merry-go-round, I thought I could feel music touching my soul, something warm, sudden cold, the spirit dance was unfolding. That river of sound, I think, is the blast of the bullets, the 5 bullets that Chapman shot off to him. Through the mirror is like passing from this world to the next. And as Lennon slips away, the music touches his soul, sudden cold, because the spirit dance is unfolding around him.
Man, that's dark. And now, when it comes to Mark Chapman, is it ever likely, do you think, and I know this is an area you've researched in a lot of detail, particularly his life, do you think it's ever likely they're going to let that guy out?
I don't think so. I honestly don't see it. I think there would be such an outrage and outpouring of sort of anger and hurt that I don't think it'll happen. No.
Because he does keep asking for parole.
Yeah,
and he does keep trying, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think if they let him out, they'd be signing his death certificate.
I think so.
For me, I don't know so much. I think that there is a lot of value in articulating what are often seen as occult ideas. I mean, the minute you bring them out into the open, they stop being occluded. They stop being occult. But
I'm not sure whether that's true. Like in terms of like bringing the ideas out, isn't so much of a problem. The occulted things are just what you actually see for yourself.
That's right.
Having used them.
But what I was going to say is, there's a guy who I was editing a book of his, and then I was taking so long over it, I basically sent it back to him. He kind of reminds me of you, to be honest. I don't know whether or not either of you would agree with the comparison. He's called Thad McCracken, and he writes on Disinfo.
Vaguely recognise the name. Yeah.
He's a great writer. both you and Thad McCracken agreed on this one, because this was one of the debates we had when I was editing his book. He was saying, right, I've done some spells that I can't reveal what the intent behind them is. And I'm saying to him, when you're writing a book, you've got to tell the reader everything. And he's going, I don't know, we got this big debate, not an angry debate, but he was very much the opinion, which you are, that if you cast a spell or a sigil, you really shouldn't be telling anyone what the intent is.
Well, I don't know entirely about that. I mean, it might be a case. It just depends on what you're trying to do, really. But it just depends. I think.
And what about the reaction of people like I've heard rumours that some of the people close to John Lennon believe it was a hit job, organised by people within the government.
Yes, and I'm still not 100% convinced that it either was or wasn't. I think the jury's out on that one. It would work if Chapman had been brainwashed, as I say, like some sort of Manchurian candidate.
Do you want to explain quickly what a Manchurian candidate is?
Right. It's a term used for somebody who's been brainwashed to perform a certain task in response to a certain trigger. Okay?
So doesn't it come from... I remember hearing that, assassins, ninjas, that kind of thing, they would have a massive quantity of drugs put into their body, and then they would be shocked and frightened and told to do something when they heard a code word, basically, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So what you're saying is the hit job theory would fit if you could find a period in Mark Chapman's life where he was taken away and brainwashed.
Yes.
But there's no evidence of that ever happening.
Well, there's some strange gaps in Chapman's life, and there's some strange things that he got up to that can't really be explained very simply.
Give us an example.
For instance, at a time when the Middle East was going into meltdown, Chapman got posted on a voluntary sort of, almost like a gap year sort of job, into Beirut, which was one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Now, if you're looking for a sort of Manchurian candidate, one of the things that they have to cope with is blood and death. And the term is called blooding somebody. You expose them to extreme violence on a daily basis, which is exactly what Chapman would have got in Beirut. And he had to actually, like all Westerners, he was evacuated from Beirut. Now, why was he there?
Now, the blooding thing, for anyone who may have heard of that, probably most people who've heard of that will have heard of it from The Hunt. What happens is when people go out hunting, they'll shoot a fox, and then you wipe the blood of the fox on the youngest member of the hunt's face. And blooding is what you're talking about there. It's an ancient ritual.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's possible that he went over there and was blooded over there because there was this random period when he's just sent off. I mean, one of the other questions with something like this is if you've got a guy who has been trained and then you're talking about triggers setting them off, who do you think it would have been that would be behind the hit?
Talking about the idea of not actually revealing much is that I've gotten into very much trying to make a sound, as it were, right? And part of that sound is quite muffled, I mean, there's a kind of when Loveless by My Bloody Valentine came out, 91 or whenever it was, it was kind of like, you kind of put it on and it was like, sounded like there's fluff on the needle or whatever, and you couldn't hear what they're singing about. And it almost sort of, there's this idea that it doesn't matter, there's a kind of idea that people sort of go, oh, you can't hear the lyrics or whatever, and it's like, well, it doesn't really matter if it's like something to do just, if it's a kind of magical spell, it could be seen as a sort of magical ritual for myself, it doesn't really matter whether they can hear the words or not. It's like, it's the act of me singing them which is the important bit and puts across a feeling, and it's almost like the kind of keeping it unambiguous there, that nothing is actually revealed. Probably because I'm quite shy and slightly embarrassed, about what I'm doing, And part of that, I'm sure, comes from comes from having been sort of, or the whole sort of art world or art form or whatever, being sort of repressed in a way. That it's kind of like you have to it goes underground, I think that's kind of a bit of a hangover, probably a hang-up that I've got from trying to do what I do, with kind of well-meaning advice being given from all sides, forever and a day.
Well,
Hey,
as I say, the FBI were following
be long.
Lennon
tracking
very
me, and
carefully
we'll see you
because of his
tomorrow.
Political activities.
Thanks for stopping by, Warp Drive.
And incidentally, can I just back you up there? That is mainstream media news now. The files, the files have been released.
Yeah.
The American government were tapping his phones. I mean, go into some of the detail on that, David.
The American government were tapping his phones on a daily basis. They were observing his every movement. They were tapping the phones of some of his friends. And
why? What? He's a pop singer.
Yeah, but he was a pop singer who millions of people over the world followed. If John Lennon said something, it was headline news. If he said he believed something, it was headline news that John Lennon believed that, and millions of people would follow him.
So they were frightened of him.
Oh yes.
No,
I mean, the war is over. Which we still sing it as a sort of Christmas song. John Lennon's, war is over. Yeah. I mean, that was a very powerful weapon, which he used against the American government, and forced their arm into finishing the Vietnam War.
So it turns out there's one thing that really can piss off the military-industrial complex, the American government. It's a hippy-dippy singing peace and love.
Yes.
That really gets their goat.
Yes.
That's mad.
That's basically why they were watching Lennon. He was sort of friends with left-wing activists in America, and they were frightened. Yeah, they were frightened of his power.
So if Mark Chapman was a brainwashed hitman, and he carried out the hit, what are we talking? Would it have been the CIA, the FBI? I mean, with who?
Yeah, I don't know. It would have probably been some sort of special operations section of the CIA.
Mm-hmm. So it's genuinely worrying stuff. Do you know what, David? I've enjoyed talking to you. Your website, which has got loads of information on there, lennon-chapman.com, is well worth looking at. And I like the fact that you don't know. You're 50-50 on whether or not it was an inside job or not. Listen, I want to thank you for joining us on the show. Good to talk to you, man.
Okay, thanks very much.
There we go. That was great. And what I really like about your music is that there are some bits where you just think, that's a pop song, and you get it stuck in your head. Right, and I'm trying to hopefully show that with the podcast, the way I'm editing it. I'm trying to showcase some of it. Go, listen to this.
Music works a lot on repetition, and it's like if you kind of hear things a few times, it's almost like a kind of...
But let me let people into the thing.
Go
right? The thing is this. Every now and then, my populist instincts come to the fore. All right, and I am a populist in some senses. I do like talking to large numbers of people. It can be a pain in the arse, and I've moaned about that enough on the podcast in the past. But there's something that I always can't help but think to myself, that you could probably cut together a hit album if you just sat down and took out the catchy numbers and stopped them from being 12-minute soundscapes. You could do that. So that's what I'll often say when I've had a drinky poos. However, I think if you did that, I'd go off you.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. How about that? Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, because a lot of what I'm influenced by in terms of music and stuff is bands who do much more extreme stuff than I do, much more...
Alrighty then, and welcome along to the cult of Nick. We've got Bitcoin trader Buttons with us in the studio. And,
this is the best part of this episode.
The cult of Nick, 066.
This is a double edge. We've listened to one double cut put in side by side, cross cut with one another, and now for the next part, the whole thing is going to be, I'm not talking about what I'm doing, I mean Cult of Nick. For the next part of the episode is going to be new content which he filmed or he recorded in 2013 when it was still timely information, and still kind of is. Insert rotation. He's going to maintain that rotation for quite some time. That's at the end of this block. Moving closer to there. So this should go a little quicker now that I got most of this stuff done. So I'm going to go back in time just to double check my assumptions. It's going to take him a while to traverse 2 meters of width of car. Here's the last keyframe. He's forced probably about a meter past it when he finally gets around the corner, so I'm going to go over this way, turn on this so I can see past my own tool, I should say, the personal bubble, which I called it earlier. I'm going to use my controller as the thing that controls the space from the car, right? And then I know he's going to turn approximately, well, the center is approximately on the corner when he gets to this point. So that's a low rote. So there's one low rote followed by another one, but we'll see what the general motion is here. On the side the building is correct, but it isn't quite this. It takes a while for him to get that far and turn that much. So for example, by this point he's still way down. He's more close to this. So that's a rotation one. I'm going to use rotation for that one. Now this one follows by necessity. Now he's on his way back through here, but he only makes his way about halfway across the line of traffic before he gets hung up. So I'm thinking he's probably about that far when he gets hung up with people and everything else. And his line of motion, his line of vision, is back over this way because he's sidling past and turning sideways to let people pass. There's more people here than is apparent. Like immediately apparent. I'm going to get the extreme point of his turn here. He's decided to turn, he's elected to turn back and have a look at this side of the building. Ford Fisher's right over here. He's well back from the corner. Going to have another low rote there since he hasn't moved any. He's going to sidle in a little bit and sidle out a little bit. Maybe I should do this one then, hey? Sidle in and his most northerly point. So he comes in well off the like the line of the curb is what he does, and that's pretty much where he was. I like that. And now, oh, we're going to rotate this away. And we can clearly see that there's the red, there's the white. So they're both in the view of the arc. That's basically lining up. That's all I'm using for a kind of guide as to what I might want to see in the various images. Lote rote. Now he's all the way over to where the park line is, coming between here. This is tight to it. Go back to that last one and see this again. Step, 2 side steps, and then a step forward toward the car in the middle before beginning the turn. So I'm going to make up the distance over this way. And then indicate that this is the direction he's opted to move in. You sidestep twice before turning. So, second sidestep is here. He's still rotating in this way. Insert just a rotation. Sidestep, sidestep, and then turn. Vuvuzela. I'm going to keyframe another one on either side of that one. Nothing much changed. All he does is bend down and pick it up. So road again. He's a couple steps forward before he tosses it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to measure this. Even though he's going slow, we can generally get this. He's making his way all the way back to the corner, and right now he's slowly picking his way through the crowd. Lots of camera turns. I might want to use that one as a mark. He's trying to make his way to the curb. You can kind of tell when he gets there because she's hot on it. So is he. He gets a step up at one point here. I got every indication or reason to think that that's as far as he gets. But I want to do this now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2 seconds he's going to be turning like that. Insert rotation. Two seconds now he's going to be turning more around the corner. Insert rotation. He's got one camera move which is I'm going to try to get this one. This is the extremity of the move. I'm going to go for that point since it accords well. In 3 seconds time he's still pointing. He's still pointing to the front of the building here. Like this. Before turning. He turns and he hovers right there. But he is kind of crawling the building right there. Right the way to the other corner. Slowly making his way forward. He's at the back of the Camry. And he's turning around and he's facing the first line of utility on the other side. Roughly facing towards Ford again. Ford hasn't moved back to take the camera yet. takes another couple steps away from her and looks back to the parking garage there. Look, maybe 1.5 meters that way, before looking back at the parking garage and well to this side of the tower. Tower's in the corner, so wherever that line is, just a bit back from there, right? Insert rote. He gets that far with steps before he decides to change his direction, or decides to change his rotation. I think he's still looking up the street there. Insert rote. Then he snaps right around. GK is very nearly done here, thank goodness. He pretty much makes a beeline up the hill here. I'm going to take my little break though before I get any farther. Wake me up before I go. Before I go to bed. Sleep. Stuff happens to me. So I'm sitting there having a cigarette just a moment ago, and I didn't have my phone on me because reasons. But anyhow, I'm sitting there having this cigarette, and along comes a cat, and the cat's got a piece of fucking grass in his mouth, and he's chewing away a piece of grass. I'm like, what the fuck, cat? Cat looks at me and says, it's just grass, man. What's the fucking problem? It's just grass, man. What's the fucking problem? I'm going to be using that one on stage. I'm waiting for my tea is right there next to where the camera phone is. And I'm waiting for it to cool down. So while I'm waiting for it to cool down, I was having fun with my guitar. Because I've been playing the banjo so much, I have learned a few tricks that I didn't used to know how to do on a guitar. Like doing like a story while I'm playing a repetitive thing over and over. Yes, not a variation on Alice's Restaurant either. It's a Squirrel Nut Zippers. Everywhere old Princess goes, where that's where she goes to. Always so debonairish, I tell ya, flirts with such a flair. Oh, you dog, everything's hazy, everything's crazy, and everything is up in the air. My baby says that she loves Princess, and man, I really don't care. Why won't you tell me all about you? Hey, Princess, why don't you come downtown and then I'll show you around, man? Oh, I'd like to get my hands on you, don't you know it? But well, my baby said that she loves Princess, but you won't find him downtown. Squirrel Nut Zippers. Prince Nez. Yeah, and it's normally done with a different kind of a thing than that. I like that though. One of the tricks I've picked up in the last little while. Between the choice for swing dancing, you always have was it between the choice? Yes. There's a choice involved with swing dancing. You could always dance blues instead, if anybody knows how to dance the blues. Do you know how to dance to the blues? Well, if you can dance to that, you can dance to the blues. Swing's different. Everywhere old Princess goes, that's where she goes to. Always so up in the air, flirts with such a flair. You dog it, everything's hazy, everything's crazy, and everything's up in the air. Well, my baby said that she loves Princess, and man, I really don't care. Well, well, my baby said that you love Princess, but you won't find him downtown. Good evening. This might qualify for half. Just a work in progress, I guess. Sucking on a toffee candy that I got downtown busking today when I singing it would have been easier than like trying to play it blind without practice. Click, click, click. Give it a minute. 1 minute. Huh. Don't make any sense. I'll learn to use my other hand too. I was reviewing some of the organs today, but I don't have a whole hell of a lot I haven't played already for much better. Belalo. Come back, let me know when the sun sign is. Oh, I'm maybe. Here's your answer. Woo! Never said I was good at the organ. I merely called it a Banjocast. Now that that's over. You like my answer, Belelu? You get it? Maybe. Maybe I'm a Leo. But you gotta ask me about why I figure I might be a Leo. It's not because I'm actually one, it's because I think it's probably right. I think they've probably got it all wrong, eh? If the sun, this is a sun sign, you say. But I think of it as star sign, so we call it a sun sign because the sun's in front of the star pattern, not because the star pattern is visible, right? Yeah, maybe I'm a Leo. Why don't you try putting maybe I'm a Leo into YouTube and see what it gets? Enter maybe I'm a Leo into a YouTube search and have a laugh later. I should change my color too. Not a deep purple. Purple though. Since I say maybe, and because I'm saying it's 100, I think I'm 180 degrees away from a Leo. I think they got it all backwards. Sun sign. What star were you born under? Means midnight. And that was Leo. Do 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 do. I have to beg that I'm not going to give you the correct answer for that one. It was a Fives Day. That's the truth. It was a Fives Day. No. But I'm saying that the star pattern for your time of year, let's put it another way. If the sun is between you and your star sign, then the star sign that you must be closest to is the one which is 180 degrees opposite from it. So if I'm born in a time of year when it says let me get this right. If I'm born in a time of year when it says, say, I'm Libra, I'm actually Pisces or the one after that, Capricorn? No, not Aries. I think I might actually legitimately be a Leo, but only due to the fact that Leo would have been in the sky that time of year. If not Leo, then probably closer to Cancer. Than Aries, I mean. First thing I did, Balelu, when I became when I became a proper practicing part-time Discordian was to start paying attention to the stars. Well, I don't know. Never had them read, and they'll be read only on my own terms. I have the last time I did a tarot reading, I walked into the reader. I still have the reading, actually. I still have a copy of the reading because it was the first time I actually went to somebody who was offering like card reading services. So when I went in there, I asked her only basically only one or two questions before we began. And first one was, would you mind if we use your deck, but if we throw the cards in a pattern which I determine? And she said, oh, no problem. I said, great, perfect. And then I asked her a quick question pertaining to how to provide remuneration to her, how to pay her. So when I went to see this tarot reader, that's the only two questions I asked. One is, can I throw the cards any pattern I want? And she said yes. And the second one was, how do I pay, or how is this acceptable payment? And she agreed. So I paid her. She threw the cards in the pattern that I wanted, and then she read them, while I also read them because I knew why the pattern was the way it was. And when she was telling me what she thought, I was also some of the time thinking, okay, well, this is what I think. And some of the time I was asking her questions. Well, this is what I think. What do you think? And I got a better reading that way. I got a really good reading that way, although some things I disagreed with, and some of them were all right, and it was a really cool reading. But she didn't ask me any questions about when I was born or any other related issues, which is strange because when you use tarot cards, you'd expect to, well, at least in my mind, you expect to have some associations between specific cards and specific, say, zodiac signs or specific symbols or whatever else. So it was interesting. Funny thing is, of course, with tarot, it's throughout, and we were talking about this the other night, how the Kabbalah is going to factor into some of the imagery which is in it. And also, depending on the deck, it's more or less related to, say, Masonic symbol sets. J and B are all through Rider-Waite they're called? Rider-Waite. Whereas the one that she used was the Thoth deck. She used the Crowley deck. And Crowley deck is probably closer to where I would have it. This is why I say, I asked her, can I use your deck? Throw them in my pattern. Because I knew she had a Crowley deck. I must be a Leo. I think I must be actually a Leo. I must be a Leo. Because I don't think I trust any of the way that it's normally going. Like the way that they normally talk about it, it doesn't make sense to say that something which is on the other side of the sun has more influence than something which is closer to you. How could that be, right? Now, maybe, how could it be? It's because it's solar worship. And if you don't necessarily see the relationships in the same way, then the period of time when the period of time when you are eclipsed because of the planet behind you from the star pattern which is closest to you, i.e., the period of time when that star has the best chance of even seeing you is when it's doing it, when our planet does a transit in front of the sun. That's when I think is probably the real time that it's your star sign. This the only time they would ever have a chance of seeing you, if they matter. Yeah, I act like one. It's a funny thing because Leo doesn't necessarily mean anything to me other than that. I recognize where it is in the sky now. Leo's one of my, since I learned where to look for it, it's one of my favorite constellations. So easy to pick up. When Mars goes through Leo, it's really cool. I find that a neat time. Come think of it. But anyhow. Consequently, to both of that things, I don't use 4 seasons a year anymore either. I changed my thinking on how to think about seasons, and I think of 3 seasons rather than 4, which allows for 6 seasons. 6 seasons is more common if you go to an equatorial region. I'm told I'm a Leo even though my birth sign is something else. Right. Well, it's easy to pretend that you're anything. It's the best part of it. You could easily get away with saying, well, I'm actually something that you're not, and but maybe I'm a Leo. That's the way I look at it. Deep Purple did tell me. When I realized what Deep Purple had already been telling me, I was like, oh my God. So your sidereal sun sign is Leo. So born in August. Or between August and September, is it? The funny of the offsets too. The offsets are changing. Over and over. The tarot reading was pretty neat though. Still think about it. Would shake a sound with what? With that title, maybe I'm a Leo, but let's see exactly. Why would I? Oh, September. Yeah, but maybe I'm a Leo has already got the name. That's what I'm saying. Do a search on YouTube, you'll find there's already a song. That's the other thing. I changed my calendar to a 5-day pattern. I use 5-day patterns now, but since I did that, I noticed all of the various. Some of the funny things is I decided to pick the random date, essentially arbitrary date for the New Year's Day. It's not January 1st. And when I did, a lot of the dates for various events during the year fall on square dates. So the week 9, 3 squared, is the week of the equinox, of spring equinox, for example. And the first season ends at square week 5, so 5 squared 25 week. And the second season ends, like this fall begins at week 49, which is coming up on us. We're at week 46 now, so we're 3 weeks away from the next change. 25 and 49. I love it. That stuff I think it's funny that the math works out well for that. Hell no. Hell no. Why would I worry about the satanic stuff? That's assuming I allow any kind of power to the like the ideal in the first place. I don't give it any reality outside of my own head, for starters. If I have a connection with that already, that's one thing. But if I don't have a connection to it, I don't have to have one. Since I don't think that it exists outside of myself as something to come after me, like a Soviet Russia joke. As it goes, Soviet string theory evidence finds you. But yeah, the Discordians are very interesting for that reason, though. They open the doors to understanding some of why the satanic rituals emerged as they did. But one thing that I never did learn until much, much later is that, and it was from Styx Hexenhammer of all people, was the connections between the Church of Satan and the Catholic Church. You really can't have one without the other. And the fact that they've both been organized and exist under the same economic umbrella is not offensive to anybody. Now, the Crowley deck isn't particularly satanic, I don't think. It's certainly heavy in a symbol set, which is for the more esoteric branches of whatever group you want to talk about, like if it's the Temple Orientalis or whatever it's called. Oh, there's a connection, but through Egypt, and then what's satanic about it? I don't see anything that's necessarily satanic about it. First thing I did when I designed my own tarot deck was to get rid of the character Satan and replace him with a different name, which was more mundane. Replace the character with a different name. Instead of hiding behind the name Satan, I called it something else. And all of the associations that Satan had exist for this person, this characterization, this ideal character, right? And it's funny, the chains are there, this is there, this is there. And if I said what the name is right now, it would probably I'm going to type it rather than say it. Just because this is what I think the Satan or devil card should be called. That's my idea of what the devil card is in a deck of tarot cards. If it happens to be Crowley or Raider White, what's it called? Waite Rider. Oh, Catholics is Satanists. That's very real. Yes, especially since like post LaVey, since LaVey popularized it and made it very clear. But then, why would the Catholics have it any other way? There's all these books to be sold. There's tons of money in an untapped market. Why, what? Like what? Catholics and Satanists? I don't see any. Other than the fact that they have a space for... They've always had a... This other side, I think, too. Catholics have always had a space for Satan. Anything that they didn't want to blame... Anything that had to be denied and could be blamed on some force, some kind of evil force out to prevent it, could be blamed on Satan. The same as anything which didn't need to have a person taking the credit for it could be given to God for glory. They're not there weren't very many Jews as merchants here. I still settle on the name merchants. I don't see the economic... You think Americans don't know how to be merchants? Or it's just Jews? American mercantilism. I remember the first time I saw the Ferengi in TNG, I used to think of them, oh, that's space Jews. There's not space Jews at all. That's American traders. As the ultimate... There you go, right? Merchants have all the same associations as the devil card. Look it up and check it and see if I'm not right. The change which bind you, that's credit. Or it could be something that they sell to you. Maybe something that you can't do without, right? So drug addiction, the devil card, they run hand in hand. Merchants, my friend. Get rid of all other cultural associations and think of the devil as a merchant, and that's all that'll get you through. Yeah, being the Jews what the Jews are the rest of the world. Well, there you go. I think if I look at it, that's why I say it doesn't matter what culture you come from. It's really about your economic class, and merchant is a class distinction, same as Lannister was, or Lanista in Rome, right? I'll write that down. Lanista. I've made several other changes too. No more tower. So the place where the false flags used to reside, the towers, now it's the stage instead. I called that years ago. You shouldn't think a House of Cards is one way of looking at it, but it's really a stage. It's a staged thing. It's got to be put on public display like a hanging, otherwise it doesn't work. And when it does, sometimes it causes the opposite effect. The whole thing comes down anyway, no matter what you do. Got rid of the... What other ones? Chariot? I got rid of the Chariot. Got rid of... I might have got rid of one of the other trump cards, but other than that... Tarot has 5 suits in the deck, not 4. That's awesome, too. I think it's the coolest part. Another saying about Jews, Turks, Greeks, and Armenians. I heard a guy once who claimed that you could... if you went to the Mediterranean... It was basically impossible for an outsider to tell the difference between any of the cultures that are living side by each. Which is why the interior divisions between the cultures, which can pick out the differences, that's colloquial or no, it's provincial. And it takes 6 Jews to fool an Armenian. Well, there you go. That stuff don't bother me, see? All I see is merchants. Merchants with credit histories. And here we go. Headed up the street after making a swing to the right. got my ruler there, so I'm going to use them to position myself in space. I think this is pretty much as far as, what's in my file? It could be the, I think it's about as far as the telephone pole must be, the power lines and stuff. Insert loc rote. Go back to the last one, get the swing right. Because he comes around real quick like. Insert the rote there too. See, I don't see race at all myself. I got to be honest. I'm not a denier of, but I think that the culture, to say that you can see a difference that's going to be lasting genetically for a long period of time, or let's put it another way, the more pure the race gets, the more likely that it's not going to live for a long time. There should be no such thing, or maybe not. The only way that it's going to survive for any long period of time is if there's no attachment to ideal that doesn't exist. Part of the reason why the Habsburgs lasted as long as they did, but they still died out. Like they crossed into as many families as they could, and at the same time they didn't stop inbreeding, so it didn't matter. Okay, well, good luck, because purity of race means that you're going to keep inbreeding, and if you keep inbreeding, you know where that goes. The Habsburgs had no luck with that. They're not the only ones. Funny what happens, though. The most genetic diversity of all exists on one continent, because it had the longest to do it. The most diversity, that is. Not necessarily cultural diversity, but genetic diversity. Got to think about this next move here. Just move the camera, just move the ruler. You can see how far I got to go to the next mark if it keeps going in the same direction of speed. And he does kind of go up the rest of the road fairly quickly. So from the mark 1, 2, 3, 4, and he stops. Oh well. Yeah, I know, and yet you say you can say this, but you know what you're not providing? Any kind of proof to that. It's a statement. I'd love to see the proof. Where's your 4,000-year-old sample? And why does it prove from 2 samples that that's true for a larger number than 2? How can you know that? You get a sample of a hell of a lot of people, right? Wait. Well, okay. I ain't denying any genocide. All I'm saying is that if you inbreed exclusively, the end result is definite. And it ain't good. Yeah, I'm sure you could show me. You know what? What's the rule on the internet again? All right, pics or get the fuck out. I don't mean that literally. I'm just saying. I'm working with video this time. I got pics with video though the same. So I said 4 steps forward and then a pause, and he's going to be pointing to the opposite corner when he gets there. Insert loc rote. That's not showing me proof. That's another claim without any. What I'm saying is, why don't you show me the proof that it hasn't changed in 4,000 years? Where's your samples coming from, and what's your data set in total? So that I got some idea what this proof consists of. I'm not any geneticist either, but you know, averages. Averages being what they are. Oh, he's passed across the road farther than that, because I'm going to see here. He's like here, like sort of, kind of. How long does he wait? Till about there. When the move is complete, so it's about that. Sir Lot wrote, going to update the rotation maybe a little. I knew this one guy. I met him a long time ago. His name was Monty, and he ran a channel on, was on Justin TV back then. And Monty, one of the things Monty used to say was, well, first of all, he said he was an army brat, which I didn't disbelieve. I believed him. I might have been wrong to believe him, but I believed him. And he said that he was an army brat whose father was from one country, whose mother was from another country. So he shared nationalities, which I tend to believe, but starting to stretch when you add together the two factors, right? Anyhow, one of those nationalities was German, and he still resides in Germany. That's where his channel was being operated from, so on and so forth. And Monty was the guy who said, Monty, the guy who's living in Europe and has spent time in the Mediterranean for one reason or another. He was the guy who said you can't tell. If you look around from culture to culture, almost like what they call a ring species, the differences are so minor between any two cultures side by side. When you look at them as for outsider purposes, or you look at them just having joined into that society, you can't tell. The longer, it's only when you get to the extremes, and even then it's a graduated intermixing every time there's boundaries between, right? There's no hard and fast culture to protect, really. Now, I've listened to a lot of people on YouTube since then, and many of them will talk about how one culture genocides another culture. Many of them. And it is proper genocide when you go about it, but the way that it happens is you don't kill everything. You merely kill one of two genders. You merely kill one of the two sexes if you want to accomplish genocide. You must have the breeding stock. You got to have breeding stock, or the inevitable result of inbreeding is what gets you. That's part of the problem. And I happen to live in a culture where two warring factions managed to live together for a couple hundred years without killing one another. So, whatever happened. Even with all the trouble in Northern Ireland, we didn't have any like that here. Intermarriage wasn't always looked upon kindly, mind you. Makes two steps, takes another pause. Rolls this away. Frig, I'm gonna be here all day waiting for this. Roll that one back over here, law. Insert load rope. You don't get any farther than that in all that time, and that ain't very far. And his angle ain't updated very much in that time either. There's three saying with scholars. It's called a museum culture too sometimes. when nothing's changed for such a long period that you can essentially study it at any point in the past. Sort of like a fossil. Not many museum cultures left. A lot of them run out. There ain't a forward one. There is a forward one. Wow. He only goes maybe another half a friggin' meter forward. Insert rope. And he's going downhill now. Shies. Cross the street, not a right angle. He's going to start moving again there, but he's taken like a tiny step forward, moved that way. Rolled around that way. Lope road. Right up the ledge of the street here. Look at this. Past this. Essentially the point where he started. And he's going to be still pointing across the street from around there. Maybe that far. I don't think it's really that far. But he's going to be pointing right about there when he gets there. Another lope rope. Here's a series of camera moves that I want to track. He's going to be moving right up the edge here, the ledge. So I'm going to indicate with camera move. As he comes forward, he needs to be more or less parallel to the line of the road at that point. He's going to turn in. I'm going to move him back a bit too to indicate this, but he's going to turn in to show the inside corner here, and you'll still see this other corner. That's the width of his angle of his lens coming into effect. So I actually get this shot that's indicated here, right here. Still pointing to this side of the road though. Hey, I gotta get this right. There's a drummer all the way up here. He should be maybe parallel to the hole in the wall by this time. And pointing to the curb, like, or the corner beyond it, right? So it's not on the corner, but beyond the corner. Maybe about up there. Another rope for that. Takes his time, passing the wall there. There's a couple of slow steps. And then at this point, he kind of flips around. Takes up his position here for a second, maybe. You know, he keeps walking. He ain't going to stop either, which is awesome. Till he's pretty close to the top of the hill, which I can take a guess at where this is. Again, mostly due to what work I've done with Challenger at a later point. What do I mean by that? Well, I got this background image. I also have another map that I've been using earlier on to figure out, like, what's the distances here. Where's this stuff indicated against this corner? So he's beyond the corner and he's beyond the gap. He's like all the way up here, but maybe halfway along to the top. Not at the very top. Not in the middle of the road, but on this side of the road. So this is a matter of, like, maybe I wouldn't call it rough guessing it, but looking for the right angles to get the right pieces of wall on both sides. So the white wall on both sides pointing towards the inside corner of this brick wall. It's offset from here. And far enough north that he could be parallel with this bike parking area, which has got the posts. Runs between here and the edge up here. There's a gap there though. So that looks more or less decent to me. Wrote for that one. Go back in time. And I'll just map out some of his motion. For example, he's going up this side more than this at this point. So this needs to roll like that. Insert the rotation only. I need to sweep all the way over and then hold. Then over time it'll straighten up. And he's going to hold on this corner coming up in the last. So it's pointing right off this corner. Where was this one here? Comp froze. Check the two links. Yeah, I will. Well, I'm using this icon. This is going to be GK on the top-down map. We'll see where he is, what he's doing. This is like a personal bubble to indicate where he is in the dead center. This is much wider than he is. This is much rounder than he is. But that's his bubble of space. And then this is his body cam. It's a fisheye, so it's got a nice wide angle implied by it. And I can calculate roughly using the width of the angle to figure, hey, this is what he can see with that wide angle. Same as I can do it with Ford down here. Ford, for example, is getting corner shots of the car and stuff, or he should be at this moment in time. Whereas GK is making his way up the road here, so I'm using this line for the controller. And I know that GK's camera shot's centered right on the corner of that building. So I can get that angle right for the minimap. And then as he moves forward again, he's going to center on that side as he's walking. Definitely by that time. And the average distance is enough for me in this case. So I'm going to reset the line on this side to indicate he's walking side to side a little. And then through this section, he's going to hold on that center line for a minute. Maybe not a minute, but for long enough that I should update the rotation again. Closer I get to the end here, the more it's going to want to spin around, because that's what he's going to do at the end of the motion. And it's coming up here. So there's where the indicated turn is. Right before the turn though, he's consistent. Ooh, shoot. Right before the turn, he's consistently there. Right before the turn up here. So right before that turn begins, I'm going to hold on that corner, yeah? Right on. So the last possible moment that I can allow that rotation to occur, I want it to occur. And then to show that he's going to turn half first and hold that, I'm going to get the turn. And when he holds it, I'll hold him. But he needs to be more square than that. And then there's a second part of the turn. So when the squareness ends and the next begins, then I roll it. I could even indicate that there's a slight turn between the first key and the second key, but then this after this one it's a straight around all the way down to that corner. In fact, it goes even beyond that and then bounces back. He's still walking uphill though. He's going to do the same thing here. Makes about 4 steps, another 4 meters maybe uprange. I use the ruler here too. So the next one, 1, 2, 3, 4 meters maybe uprange. It's going to end up pointing back at this wall this way. Insert float rote. Go back in time. Let's get the motion. Or let's get the rotations right. And so in this time, he's going to go all the way forward. Establish on his walking bearing. His body now shifts around to show which direction he wants to move in. Whether we like it or not, or whether he likes it or not, the camera points that way. And now the camera's pointing at the front of that building, like toward the corner. Past this corner and onto this corner because it sticks out. This needs an inserted rotation key. I to insert it. There'll be another rotation key similar to it farther up here, but he already centers on the cop on the way down, so I can let this one kind of happen. Look, and as long as it's pointing at where the camera is, so you don't get there till much, much later. This is where the keyframe is. Okay, I'll go back 10. Go back 10. I'll update this one. Yeah, rotation. Might be that I want to do that slower than that. Let's try this. Insert rote. Going to clear these keyframes. Or so delete them is the better way of putting it. Oh, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. I need the top ones. I don't need the bottom ones. Going to update that with the better curve or the better rotation, somewhere back to about there. The length of the building back, maybe that much. Insert float road again, I guess. He's going to swing around, start walking. He's got to go to the edge of the brick. Before he gets hung up here, he'll be turned around and pointed right at the corner though when he gets there. And he seems to be standing around about next to where the vehicles and stuff would be. Right about there, I would think. When he gets close to here. And it's well in. Let's try that. Established on his turn. Rote. Straight between the buildings, maybe a little bit to one side so it's tight to this one. Insert rote. So the turn shouldn't really begin till about there. Insert road again. There's the mark. What? Make sure the tie line is correct. See, well, yes, it would be partly the time frame, but it's also going to allow me to see what should be visible in someone else's camera and at what point. Like, for example, I can more clearly identify Gilmore because I know that what's his name, Ford Fisher's definitely shooting at him at a time when he's here, or whatever. Or another one, how close could Fisher possibly be to the Challenger in the late phase? Not in the early part, but in the late. Since I know he gets a drink right here, and Challenger drives a block away. Right, because the videos are synchronized that I can even dare to take a chance as to saying where they're going to be. Because I know things like where the cars are, where the bus is going to be. I got the drones synchronized too now. Because of where the bus had to be. Sometimes I can use an extrapolated curve and like say, well, the bus will always go at a bus speed. Like bus doesn't accelerates and decelerates, but a bus follows a schedule, right? So it doesn't try to get there fast as possible. It tries to get there when it's supposed to be there. And if I do that with Ford, I can actually get a curve which shows me what the best solution is, right? Pretty cool. Ford's curve is, or not Ford's curve, but the Challenger's curve is wild as frig, man. Challenger's curve is not what I would have expected. Although when I saw it, there was like, gee, that is kind of the simplest explanation, isn't it? Slow motion here. He's going to hold up for a second or two while he gets to the corner. Push her out of the way. Start turning north. Road. I don't have to be too precise here. I'm not tracking him for time and speed the same as I was the Challenger or anything else. Gonna try to plot his path here as carefully as possible. He's definitely going right to the center of this block, right? Making his way towards where the center would be. Before turning back. Did he turn on his left or on his right? Did he go that way? Let's try that. Turns all the way over to the pig on his first step. Before establishing north. Yeah, so the pig is the deal. Going to use that as the mark for rotation. Insert loc. Wrote? No, just wrote. Then he establishes over here for a second or two. His direction of motion is where the green line is. It's exactly where he's walking towards. The way back and forth is his left and right step. Insert rotation. Deke. Takes 2 steps towards the front of the pig there. Before swinging back. Going to use that one. Insert loc, wrote. I just wrote. Huh. Quick rotation. Right to the corner. This is going to be like kind of confusing. It's going to be spinning around back and forth. Makes 2 or 3 steps towards the pig there. One step and then another step before he changes his direction. So he's going for a center of... He's picking a spot. Makes a beeline for the pig. So hold. I'll do that again. Hold for that long before the move. Here's another lope rote for this one. And then a turn. That way. Plus a slight step that way. Insert lope rote again. And then in the last few frames, fairly simple motion. Slight step this way and maybe 2 steps that way before another lope rote. That's GK done. So yeah, whatever he's doing, whatever his reason for turning or where he's turning and when. So now it's really clear. It's not like he's walking to the top of this second block when he goes up the hill. That's what I used to think. I thought he passed right through here and went up here. Turns out he was only going this far. And I didn't really get that idea. But yeah, this worked out really well for the timing on this alleyway. Like he gets close to the alleyway, you don't even see it because of his tightness to the wall and the angle of his camera. The minute he steps out on the sidewalk, you see why I've used a wide angle representation. There's the edge coming up. So he's sort of sidling forward as slow as he can against the flow of the people coming down at him. Cops arrive, give him a break. And there's the alley. He's just a couple meters down the road, like down the run from it. Could put the APC there. Past the alleyway. He breaks away up here because he's got nothing in front of him anymore. There's dude with the friggin' flag that spotted him earlier. Dude with the flag here is the reason why I can tell where GK is on the drones too. Or one of the reasons I could tell where he is and how to sync them. All the cruisers. Cruiser, Star Cruiser. GK's Team Yellow. Sorry, NBC, sorry. That was a weird shot to decide to turn around and look down here. What the hell is he looking for? To see if he could see anything, or? Because he hasn't exactly got a great lens to be looking a long distance with. My reason for saying it. So what's he exactly looking for here? Just a crowd? And that is the second major clip done. Ford's done. GK is done. Most of the vehicles are done. Except the Tundra, the gray car, and I think Rebel's going to be the next one that I get at. Thus concludes our broadcasting morning. If you have anything you'd like to add or say or contribute to the proceedings of what's going on here, please get in contact one way or the other. I'll be back streaming again, I would imagine, sometime this afternoon. 12 hours or less. Yeah, 12 hours or less. And when I return, I'll be getting into probably Reb Z and Faith Goldie, who both need this type of tracking performed. Simply to make sure that I've got all the sources taken care of. I'm going to do one for Jeremiah Nupp. It'll be simple. He's only 13 seconds long. Gilmore needs one. I could put in one for the... if I use the clip from the accident on this side looking past the Tundra, then I'll be putting in... I'll have to synchronize the clip first, just drop it in where it needs to go, and then add in the camera tracker after to make it clear where the Tundra is and why we can see what we see when we see it. But in case you ain't seen it yet... Oh, that was GK's beginning clip. Yeah. Before GK begins... what am I thinking here? Before GK begins, the minivan pulls into place. That's what I'm really trying to say here. Here's GK's curves in entirety. Aren't they cute? Mostly rotations, not a lot of motion. But back here, the red minivan hasn't arrived yet. And I might also add, back here, here's Challenger, waiting to be selected. And Challenger has a really neat curve. Ooh, right here. Right at the beginning, please. Challenger's curve tells us everything. I started the episode by pointing this out. I'm going to end the episode by doing the same thing, or getting close to the end. The curve that I've given Challenger here, the data which I've tracked, partly is solid data and partly is extrapolated. All of this red section from here to here is an estimate. It was an estimate of the speed he would have to maintain to get to this part of the graph. This part is from Ford Fisher, and Ford only sees that point and that point occur. From the rest, from that two little points, I've extrapolated nothing forward in time and everything backward in time. What if he went that slow, the same speed that he's going through the intersection when Ford catches him early, before the 79 seconds? What if he goes back in time using that same slow speed? Will he have enough time to get close to Ford on the front part of the game of the trip 5 minutes earlier? The answer is yes, on average. So though once I could still see him at the early part of the clip, I actually pinned those down also using Ford. So the only part of this trip, well, this trip is the simplest explanation, even though it makes a big assumption, and that is that he never travels any faster than this speed, indicated by the slope on the red line. Never faster than that kind of speed, and the red line slope can change depending on how much I scale it here, one direction or the other. But suffice it to say, this curve, somewhat less than 20 miles an hour In fact, somewhat less than 15 miles an hour. The red one indicates the direction that he's facing when moving. If it holds a line like this, that means he's moving in the same direction for a long period of time. East, west, south, north, one of them. And the red acceleration curve, or the red slope this way, shows that he moves from a western location to an eastern point, starts traveling north, and then moves to a western point from an eastern point. Similarly, on the green one, he moves from a southern point gradually to a northern point. Some of the time while he's moving east, some of the time while he's moving west. Some of the time while he's doing neither east or west, but just pretty much north and south. And then when he turns west, at some point he comes to another intersection where he turns left. This turn is a left turn. And then starts going south with a tiny bit of maybe a tiny bit of this word what would this be, west motion in it. South with a west tendency. Anyway, that's the speed though that he's going through the intersection when he passes Gilmore, or when Ford catches him. And this curve is Gilmore. That's Gilmore's, what I can call yo-yo, which is from the beginning, from the crossover point of the mall to the bottom of the hill to Market Street, south to north. Then there's another turn. He reverses into the curve and turns left, is it? Reverses and turns left. So direction of motion is always indicated on the blue graph here. Always. Not only direction of motion, but if he makes a right or a left-hand turn is explicitly shown on this graph. And this, to me, in my mind, represents the simplest explanation for all available data I've so far tracked. Not just with cameras, but in terms of actual people, but what the cameras can see and where. Which is why I want the cones. So if anything at some later point becomes more important and I haven't tracked it already, I can say, well, geez, it's in this one and I know where, and let's just see. But I used the bus. I extrapolated the bus correctly from that, and I extrapolated that the average speed that the Challenger seems to be using at the crossover point of the mall seems to be around the average speed he would need to have made that entire trip without stopping. If he was to go faster to make the same points in space, if his curve is more of a sharp slope, if he waits till later to get to the same point, if he stops anywhere, if he takes a text message, if he stops for stoplights, those would also be on this curve. But this is the simplest explanation with no other data, that the average speed required would be about this. That they act, and this is a bad assumption. I know that this must change. This can't be right, entirely right. But I think that this part is pretty right. This part's pretty good. And this part's pretty good. This part between these two pretty good parts, not so good and not so good. That's the summary of what's been accomplished in my mind. The last several days of labor here in Blender, 25 rounds now. Oh, to be done by 30, that would be lovely. So without further ado, I bid you good morning and good day. Thanks for watching. Comment, subscribe below, and I will talk to you later.